Trading for Kevin Durant last season was never going to guarantee the Phoenix Suns a championship, but by doing so, new team owner Mat Ishbia just made it even more apparent that A, he believes that winning in today's NBA can only be achieved with an overload of star power, and that B, he's willing to continue paying a huge amount of money to acquire that star power. And so, based on that philosophy, the Phoenix Suns eagerly traded an aging Chris Paul, but in return, they gladly acquired Bradley Beal, another expensive star but who's a more potent, more versatile, and much younger talent than CP3. Playing for a largely mediocre Washington team the past couple of years caused people to overlook how good Bradley Beal actually is, but last season alone, he was doing a lot of excellent things offensively, averaging more than 23 points and more than 5 assists per game, while producing an above-league average 59.3 true shooting percentage. Well, Bradley Beal isn't a superstar, but he's definitely a star-level talent who'll enter next season as probably the most overqualified third option in the entire NBA next to Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. The main concern though for Phoenix after this trade was that their new core of KD, Booker, Beal, and Ayton alone would already combine to make $162 million next season, which would seem to make filling out the rest of the team's roster extra challenging. But then, credit James Jones and the Suns front office for doing what in my opinion has been one of the best minimum contract acquisition work in recent memory, as during the first 48 hours of free agency, Phoenix was able to sign 7 solid complementary role players on minimum or essentially minimum contracts. Phoenix just assembled one of the NBA's most capable bench units despite cap restrictions that left the team with very little money to spend this offseason. So what's good everyone, it's Real Balls here, and today we'll dive deeper into Bradley Beal, the Suns' new role players, and how the franchise low-key won the NBA offseason. So let's get to it. Bradley Beal will now be the Phoenix Suns' new starting point guard, at least on paper. But the thing is, point guards typically have the ball in their hands the longest, and this is one potential flaw that skeptics see with this new super team in Phoenix. Cause for sure, there would be diminishing effects in shifting too much control of the offense in the hands of Beal at the expense of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. But based on how this team has played the past couple of seasons, I think letting Beal run the offense in the right doses just might be helpful for the Suns' offense. Cause looking at it, an over-reliance on tough shot making from the mid-range caused Phoenix to falter against Denver in the second round of the 2023 playoffs. And Phoenix would have obviously benefited by having another player who could sort of duplicate the rim attacking capabilities of Devin Booker, as among all teams in the 2023 playoffs, Phoenix ranked dead last in terms of percentage of shot attempts taken at the rim. Now enter Bradley Beal, a player with a consistent appetite for attacking the basket, who's gifted with a quick first step and an ability to slither right through defenders as he drives before being able to finish against defenders at the rim out of different angles. For his career, 27.5% of Beal's shot diet came from within 3 feet of the basket. That's higher than the career marks of Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, or even Devin Booker. But it's not only Beal's willingness to attack the rim, but also his efficiency that's most enticing. As last season alone, he shot an over-the-top 78.6% at the rim, which ranked in the 94th percentile among all guards in the entire NBA. Adding a high-volume, high-efficiency inside scorer like Beal could definitely help Phoenix address their tough shot-making issues, while also enabling Kevin Durant to operate more as the mid-post scoring juggernaut he actually is, rather than the overextended offensive initiator that the team's previous roster construction required him to become. But looking at it, the threat of Bradley Beal's rim pressure and driving game also opens up his mid-range game, where he's comfortable probing defenses to either get into his quick floater or his pull-up jumper. Last season, his 47.6% mid-range clip was the 7th best mark among all 35 players to average at least 3 mid-range shots per game. Coincidentally though, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker ranked 1st and 4th on that mid-range efficiency list, which again prompted skeptics to point out a potential redundancy in skill set within this new Phoenix core with Bradley Beal's arrival. But if any, I think Beal's arrival could really just save both Booker and Durant a good deal of ball handling, while also potentially allowing both guys to explore more scoring avenues, particularly against switches. Cause as potentially the smallest guy in Phoenix's starting five, Beal will most likely be guarded by the opposing team's smallest defender. And when you place Beal as the ball handler in the pick and roll, whoever sets a ball screen for him among Durant and Booker would most likely torch Bradley Beal's undersized defender when that guy gets switched to either of them. Cause obviously, Kevin Durant is easily one of the best isolation scorers in the entire league who can shoot over anyone in an instant, while Devin Booker is also capable of posting up smaller guys using a series of shoulder fakes to set up his fadeaway jumper. Or Phoenix can just simply trust Bradley Beal to torch pick and roll defenders himself, cause while he doesn't have Chris Paul's elite on-ball playmaking, defenders still can't guard him the way they defended Chris Paul out of ball screens, cause Beal is simply bigger, more athletic, and has a much quicker first step. Over the past 3 seasons, Beal has produced 1.02 points per possession as a pick and roll ball handler, ranking in the 82nd percentile among all 195 players to run at least 1,000 pick and rolls within that span, which production basically levels to that of elite pick and roll weapons like Jamal Murray and Drew Holiday. But what further makes Beal such an enticing offensive threat in Phoenix is his ability to work off the ball. He's an active and instinctive cutter who knows how to utilize back screens and pin downs on the way to finding his way to the basket. Over the past 3 seasons, Beal has ranked in the 65th percentile among all NBA players in terms of points scored per play out of cuts, and last season alone in Washington, we've seen how effectively he functioned as an off-ball scorer, playing alongside a capable high-post dribble handoff hub like Kristaps Porzingis. Well, sure, DeAndre Ayton doesn't have the scoring gravity and passing flair of Porzingis to act as a high-post operator, but in Phoenix, I wouldn't be surprised to see Frank Vogel utilizing Kevin Durant more as a dribble handoff hub, just to see what sort of decisions defenders would be forced to make when you have 2 dynamic scorers like Beal and Devin Booker roaming around the floor off the ball. But for sure, KD and Devin Booker will still have the ball in their hands a huge chunk of the time, and the good thing is, you could also just simply ask Bradley Beal to spot up from behind the arc and he would still definitely produce. Beal is a highly efficient stationary shooter who's drained 37% of his catch and shoot threes over the past 5 seasons, including a solid 45% of his wide open catch and shoot threes last season. Teams wouldn't be able to ignore him from behind the arc, and they just can't guard him the way Denver guarded Landry Shamet, Chris Paul, Josh Okogie, or Torrey Craig in the second round, because Beal is a threat to either shoot or drive to the basket. He will just benefit from the scoring gravity that KD and Devin Booker would place in the interior. Sure, that doesn't mean there isn't any valid on-court concern here for Beal. To be fair, he's looked like a mediocre defender in recent years who just really lacked constant effort on that end. And while you'd probably call Chris Paul a better individual defender than Beal, I think he's still an upgrade for Phoenix, as a Bradley Beal and Devin Booker backcourt tandem defensively would still definitely hold better value in terms of being bigger and better equipped to handle mismatch hunting opponents in the playoffs. But also, another question that came up for Phoenix after trading for Beal is, can the team still add 2 other guys alongside their new big 3 for them to have a full 5-out lineup that can space the floor? Because in the playoffs, the Suns obviously allowed Denver to sell out on KD and Booker because they just weren't able to field a consistent 5-man floor spacing unit out there. But the good thing is, Phoenix just might have found some answers with their offseason acquisitions. One easy fix here is obviously veteran Eric Gordon, who they signed for a cheap $6.5 million deal for 2 years. Gordon will bring his customary long-range shooting and stable high-effort defense to the team, which would likely make him join the Suns' 4 core players in most of the team's closing lineups. Another important guy Phoenix brought in for a huge bargain of just $5 million over 2 years is Yuta Watanabe, a knockdown shooter with good size who last season in Brooklyn shot 44.4% from deep, which is the 3rd best mark among all 302 players to attempt at least 100 threes last season. And while Gordon and Watanabe are solid acquisitions, I think their addition of forward Keita Bates-Diop on a 2-year $5 million deal is simply one of the most under-the-radar additions by any team this offseason. At 6'8", Bates-Diop brings versatility on both ends of the floor as a long and crafty multi-positional defender who also shot 39% from 3 last season for the Spurs. I think he could really end up as the team's 5th starter because of just how his size and skill set complements the Suns' core players. But aside from those guys, Phoenix made a lot more smart additions. Instead of bringing back Jock Landale, who signed a 4-year, $32 million deal with Houston, they replaced him with a more athletic lob threat and a more switchable defender in big man Drew Eubanks for only $5 million over 2 years. Phoenix also added some solid wildcard players in backup guard Jordan Goodwin as well as intriguing unicorn Bol Bol. And looking at how the team also managed to bring back high-energy guy Josh Okogie and knockdown shooter Damian Lee on minimum or near minimum contracts, it's just hard not to appreciate how the front office was able to assemble at least a potential 11-man deep rotation with very little money on the table. Well, it's possible they might have to find a more traditional point guard after trading both Chris Paul and Cameron Payne, but they also might not after all, cause who knows, Bradley Beal just might unlock a whole new level of play that we haven't seen from Phoenix over the past couple years. The hiring of new coach Frank Vogel of course is another factor, but what's for sure is that this Suns team now has a new power structure, is now younger and also a lot more dynamic despite being a lot more expensive. But again, new owner Mat Ishbia understands that this team is now in full win now mode, which is why he's been willing to buy as much star talent as possible. Overspending is definitely a risky strategy in terms of roster building, but I think it just might be worth it in the end, especially for a Phoenix Suns franchise that has never won an NBA championship. So what do you guys think of the Phoenix Suns offseason? Is this enough for them to win an NBA championship? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Again, this is Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.